The 1% rule is very powerful. It's very easy. It's very simple to understand. Unfortunately, a lot of us work in markets where the 1% rule doesn't work. So we're here as the three amigos. We're going to talk about what do you do if there are no 1% rule deals in your market. Dion, do us a favor. Remind us where you are because you are not in your normal place, and maybe define what the 1% rule is just in case people don't know, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Oh, sure. You're going to have me explain the math. So I'm in Portugal where the hotels are really good, but they don't have good lighting. They tend to have pretty good Wi-Fi, which I'm happy with so far. I will be back for a little while. Then I'm on my way to Yellowstone. Then I'm on my way to Scotland. Then I'm on my way to Thailand. So that's the plan. The trip's planned for this year. Honestly, I was waiting to see how taxes looked because I was thinking, well, somehow I end up writing a $20,000 check. I might, check a trip or two, but nope. And ended up carrying forward a loss again this year on rental income. So next year will probably be my year I celebrate writing a check on rental income to the IRS, if the IRS is still around.
Nothing. There's nothing to celebrate. It sucked.
Not for you, no. Not this year. The 1% rule is basically, in its simplest terms, whatever the purchase price of the property is, every month's rental income, the total rent, not the profit, the total rent that comes in, is at least worth 1% of the purchase price.
Yeah, the easy example, just to clear it up for folks, if you spend $100,000 on a home, you want $1,000 in rent. That's the 1% rule at its simplest form. Go ahead, Dion. Sorry.
Yeah, and really where it had its day in the limelight was 2010, 2011, 2012, where the market was tanking. Lenders wouldn't lend. Millions of people were going through foreclosures. And there were thousands of deals in almost every market that people had to filter through to find the best deals. For me, it's actually the worst metric to use in my market because 1% deals exist in the war zones. The places where the cops can't go by themselves, where you can't send a handyman to do any work, where you can't go to collect rent, where a property manager won't manage the property, you can get a 2 or 3% deal. But you wouldn't want to own it. And you can't, unless you can go in and buy 50 streets all at once, kick everyone out and redo the whole neighborhood, which is the Millennial Mike tactic for Gary, Indiana. It's an option. It's a horrible metric to be using today. And so since my first property closed in 2013, not even it, and no property since hit the 1% rule, first year of ownership. By third year, they tend to hit that or better. So there are people right now, and the reason I kind of mention this is I've gotten tons of messages in the last couple of weeks of with rates and prices where there are, I'm just not finding a 1% deal because of the price is still not coming down and rents aren't going up high enough. And I have kind of a canned response where I send back and go, not one of my deals hit the 1% rule, and I invested for a decade and never have to work again. So maybe you could think of another way of looking for properties.
Yeah. Matt, again, the 1% rule is sexy. It is easy. People use it to sound smart, sound like they're really, really educated. First, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on the 1% rule in general? And then, yes, does the 1% rule apply in your market?
No, it does not apply in my market. Like most markets. And I think that it's always nice when there's something cute and catchy, that works. But it doesn't. Learn the skill of being a deal evaluator, and you'll make far more money than somebody who can, say what their investment strategy is in 9 words. Mm-hmm. My name is, and I use the 1% rule to buy real estate, right? Yeah. Okay. Like that's fine, but you're probably not going to buy a deal, and the deal that you have is probably going to be garbage. Like Dion said, you're probably going to have to wear a flak jacket to go collect rent. So I think that at the end of the day, what everybody needs to be able to do is have a buy box and learn how to manage that and understand this is what my input costs are going to be. What is my revenue going to be to then offset that?
Yeah.
And make sure it's above the area average.
Yeah, it's really funny for me to sit here and reflect on 25 years because as I wrote about in my book, One Rental at a Time, I start this journey as a hard and fast 1% guy. I didn't know any better, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad unlocked this new area for me. I didn't know what was real, what wasn't real. You know, my first deal on Norris Drive was purchased for 107 grand, rented for 1100, right? 1095 to be exact. So just over the 1% rule. And I used that rule probably for 2, maybe 3 years. And then you learn something. You learn something about the 1% rule. And it's why I am so anti the 1% rule, right? I rage against that as often as I can. In fact, that was one of the topics Brandon Turner and I kind of riffed on in our discussion, was just how the 1% rule is so dangerous. It's both simple, and I like your term, catchy, and it's easy even for the math people not to get, like 100 grand, 1,000. Got it, right? Above 1,000, good. Below 1,000, bad. But not only does it take you to war zones and sketchy properties, the other thing, I know people that have got by this. They buy where there's HOA. And yeah, you might be able to buy a condo or a townhome and technically get the 1% rule, but guess what's not in there? The $500 HOA.
That's right. That's right.
Right? How do you feel now, buddy? You're not only not positive, you're freaking negative cash flow, but congratulations, you bought a 1% deal. It's just mind-numbing to me. You know, it just sends you down the wrong path. So let's get back to the topic at hand. We don't like the 1% rule. Neither of us, all three of us don't use it. All three of us operate in markets that don't have it today. And we're all still doing deals. So we'll go back through this, Matt. What should someone do if they spent 3 months and they now say, my market doesn't offer anything past the 1% rule? What would you tell them to do? And let's be kind before we kick them in the ass. Let's be kind first, then we'll kick them in the ass in a second. What would be the kind response?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you need to do is you need to look at, for me, I'd rather look at other asset types than move my area. Like, the most desirable area to me is something that's localized, where I know the areas, I have all that foundational knowledge, I have relationships, I have a bunch of people that can check on things. You know, I think that the most valuable thing, if you can get it, is locality. You know, being local to and being in your market. I think that's the most valuable. I think the second step to that is, after that local, it is, if that asset doesn't perform, are there other assets in that market that do in fact perform, that get you the returns that you need? And then I would look at that. And then the third step, if neither of those qualify, I would do what Dion does and then just go the next circle out. If I'm looking at local and I've got everything within 20 minutes of me, now I'm looking at everything within 40 minutes of me, or the next hub that I'm going to pick. But I'm a big cheerleader for, I love doing it in my local market that I know all the streets. You know, to your credit, Zub, you went down to Fresno all the time. The time. And every single weekend, 3 and 4 weekends a month, and doing all the travel. What bothers me most is people that invest in other markets that have been in their market twice in 2 years and never went before they bought. That's the biggest danger. You're depending solely on somebody else's interpretation of the area. I want to know exactly where this stuff is going. So that's what I would do in a nice way.
Yeah. Again, I love that answer. And again, I love the fact that you were very kind, right? Part of me expected a real mad answer. Maybe we'll get that in the second go. But yeah, different asset type, go slightly further. I think that is all great advice. I have my thoughts, but we'll go to Dion first. Dion, what would be your advice? Because you get a lot of people coming to you going, Dion, I've looked for 90 days. I want to be you. I want to be, 9 properties and financially free, or whatever it is. But there's no 1% deal. So I'm going to give up, or worse, I'm going to go out of state because there are 1% deals. What do you tell people?
Well, I do hear a lot of the people who want to invest out of state, and in some cases, completely. I mean, if you live in Hawaii, if you're for the financial firefighter or Mikey, and you want to invest in a different state, it makes sense. If you live in the Seattle area or in the San Francisco area, or in a place where you actually just don't want to own properties, even if they would cash flow, investing at a distance makes sense. The problem for me with the 1% rule is, how easy is that investor trying to make this?
Yeah.
right? It takes a few minutes looking at a deal to see if it's something you should continue to look at or if something you should dismiss. Instead of, they want a 2-second, here's the price, here's the rent, this is the good pile, this is the bad pile. That you have to do the work. It's almost like somebody made a hat that says you need to do the work. And the work is, what is the area average yield?
Yeah.
Right? If you were investing in a market where almost everything hits the 1% rule, you want to beat it. And
Exactly. Yes.
but you're also, if you're using that 1% metric, you are ignoring, it's almost like using cap rates. You're ignoring HOAs. You're ignoring what is the property taxes in your state. What is the, your strategy? Is it impacted by any new short-term rental taxes or something that can impact how you're making your money on your property? When it comes to finding deals, Matt mentioned, expanding out a little bit, and yeah, it could be a new market or whatever. For me, the remote work was the game changer, expanding out to where people will commute further if they only have to go to the office once or twice a week. I love how Matt said shift asset types before you shift market. And that's exactly what I did. I wanted single family homes from the get-go. It was my plan. I understood them. Buy one, live in it for a couple of years, buy another, live in it for a couple of years, and just rinse and repeat. They don't cash flow. They don't hit the 1% rule. They would be a negative yield. And so for me, the thing that I think will frustrate some people, I never calculate the return to find out how much I'm going to make. I calculate the return to get a number so I can compare properties as much as possible, apples to apples, to go, of the 5 that I see, these 2 are the ones I should pursue or dig deeper into.
Yeah. Love that. Well, again, I get this all the time. And again, as somebody who will freely admit and be kind up front when people bring the 1% rule to me, the first thing I got to tell the folks at this point is just stop. You're not learning anything. You're using a stupid, outdated metric. You're trying to sound cool and you're not doing the work. Stop being lazy. You need to figure out how much money you're putting into this deal and how much money it's going to give you back. Right? You talked about creating an annuity in this video or the last one, and that's exactly right. It's all about the yield. How hard is my money working? And then to your point, Dion, I want you to bust your ass and figure out what the average deal is in your market. Is it 5%? Is it negative 5%? I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. But until you've done the work, the discipline, the focus to know average, no one on the planet, myself included, can find a great deal. You only know it's great by comparison, by doing the work, by spending the time, by being disciplined. I would tell someone to stop being freaking lazy and get your head out of your ass and go do the real work. So that's what I would tell someone. I'll go back to Matt because now he's squinting at me.
What the hell? What the hell? What I was going to say was even nicer than that. It wasn't as nice as what you made me say, but dear God. No, I think for those people that are fans of the movie Dodgeball, I've got a cotton moment, which is, I think there's a major underthink to this strategy here, but let's see what it does for them. It's just majorly underthinking the concept. Again, people think that it's a really hard thing. And so it keeps them from learning the skill. But these are skills. And the people that you find that get really successful at this are the ones that found out which skills were important and which skills weren't. But it's one where they don't need other people's input to know whether or not that's a good deal. When we're talking about something complex, like structure of a deal, like of a complex deal, of course, I give you a call, I'll give Christian a call and I'll say, what do you think about that structure? But that's when it's something that's very far reaching. The deal is when it's the type of deal that 98% of people are buying. It is a very straightforward, math-focused process. Yep. And it is something that absolutely is a skill that's learnable. And when you're not doing it, you're being lazy. Like you're just trying to go, I can look at my market in 3 minutes and know what's good and what's bad. You know what you're guaranteeing yourself? You're guaranteeing yourself a bad purchase. You
absolutely. Or no purchase. Yeah.
Right. Yep. Which is even worse. Because usually over the course of time, you can turn a bad purchase around. But
Sure.
yeah, to that point, I agree with you. I just think it's a bad lazy. It's not a Dion lazy.
No, I agree with that. It's a bad lazy. At the end of the day, real estate investing is a skill. And just like any skill, like music, sports, language, if you practice it and you practice it daily, you will be incredibly good at it in a relatively short period of time. So stop being lazy. Dion, what are your closing thoughts? Because again, you brought us this topic, and where can people find you?
So I have the blunt but honest answer whenever somebody brings up the 1% rule. And I do it in a way to try to not be rude or condescending. And I start with the 1% rule is flawed and outdated, right? You said outdated. That's good. If I start with that, they think, oh, I'm using an outdated metric. You're attacking me. But I say flawed. So they go, okay, maybe I'm going to talk about something that's intrinsically wrong with it. And then I cover, well, you're not considering an HOA. You're not considering property taxes. There's a bunch of other things you're missing. And when it comes to analyzing a deal, people are looking for a quick approach. My members only live streams, right, which I do 2 a month. We go through, and it takes about 45 minutes to analyze a deal. In those 45 minutes, we're learning a skill that will take you a couple of minutes to do, because all it does is go, everything we learn in these 45 minutes, we would determine, should I continue digging into this deal? Should I shelf this deal, watch it for days on market, or should I just say this is kind of a bad deal? You could do that fairly quickly. But of the 45-minute conversation, 5 minutes tops covers the math. 40 minutes covers, these are all of the metrics you would use to determine if this is a deal you would pursue or not. And this one, I don't know if I've said this in a video or not. I don't know if I've ever calculated the exact yield on a property that I've submitted an offer on. I use what I call fuzzy math. I go, okay, it's cash flow positive. I'll know that much. I'll do enough research to know, based on rents and price and all of my expenses, including future expenses, it's going to be profitable. Then I have an idea of what the area average is, and I know if this is above or below that. But not to the detail of, this is an 8.6% return, my average is 7. I just know that once that my brain says the math is good enough, which we practice the math till we can't get it wrong. We don't just practice till we get it right. I stop thinking math. Now it's every other aspect of the deal and every other way I can negotiate once we're under contract. And it's a little frustrating that so many people are hung up on the math, the 1% rule, your yield, your all of those things, that I think sometimes they will buy a bad deal because they'll hunt through a market for months and then a 1% deal will pop up. And they'll ignore all the red flags that come along with it.
Yeah, love that. Matt, what are your closing thoughts?
I think that, a combination of, I think very often people think that it's a toggle switch. It's up or down, it's on or off. I look at real estate investing as a big, huge control board where I've got levers and knobs and buttons, and I've even got a couple switches. I don't even know what they do. Like, I don't know, but one day I'll flip them. But
yeah,
I think that too often people try to get so granular with it. You said it before, Mike, that they're kind of like trying to get blood from the spreadsheet. It's
right.
like, you're not going to find it there. And what you're trying to do is kind of a happy medium of the math, the asset, what it has, how you can improve it. I think that's why all of our investing approaches work. And it's buy box, it's rent box, it's, asset location. It's all of those things. And I think that that's what's really important, is that people learn that skill, because that's a skill that never goes away. The need for it never goes away. And if you're relying on everyone else's opinions when you're trying to buy an asset, you're not doing it right. You need to be the one with the conviction. I bought some real garbage, but I had conviction in buying it because I was just like, this is what I see this property being in 24 months.
Right.
And now that property makes $8,000 a month. And when I bought it, it did $4,000 a month. Took 2 years to make that transition, but now it's double. And now every single one of those people were like, I wouldn't have bought that. Every single one of those people is trying to buy it from me. I'm like, nope, not for sale. I'm going to keep all of that ridiculous income. So that's where I think people can learn from all three of us, where it's finding that equilibrium and understanding all of the different asset options, but also, what the deal is, and not being so haphazard to have an exact formula of 1% or just some catchy marketing thing that probably isn't even available in your market and is only going to ensure you get a bad deal. The one rental at a time approach is much more. People think that it's about finding a good deal. It's much more about keeping you out of a bad one.
Yeah, it's just a discipline's focus. Again, at the end of the day, I've said this hundreds of times and we'll say it 100 times more. Real estate investing is a skill. You're not born with some Midas touch, green
No.
thumb, whatever. If
Mhm.
you practice, you'll get better at it. At the end of the day, your job is to first A, learn average, and then B, do good or great deals. Guys, you're amazing. Take care of yourself. Dion, enjoy your trips.
Thanks. I'm looking